Hi everybody, I'm Tim from troutandfeather.com, and thanks for viewing this YouTube fly tying tutorial on tube flies part 6. This is my final episode in the tube fly series, which is really tough to believe. I'll put a link on the screen right now that will direct you back to video 1 in case you missed that episode or any of the other prior ones. During those videos we discussed a lot of topics: materials, vices, the flies, and some of the systems associated with them. Now it's time to move on to another important aspect, and that's the transition from our fly tying vise to the water when we have our arsenal of flies at the ready. One of my viewers, Ron, came up with a great title for this segment, and I'll be calling it From Vise to the Water, because it's an area that I think can kind of be forgotten about or not really known in detail to a lot of beginning fly tyers and beginning fly fishermen. So during this tutorial, I'm going to be changing the camera angle, and I'm first going to discuss the system in which I carry these tube flies, which is really quite basic. Next, I'm going to share 2 of the knots that I use to attach them to my line. And then finally, I'm going to go into detail with the mix and match system and the head and tail system, which I've referenced in prior videos. As a reminder, everything that I'm saying during this tube fly series is basically just a general guideline to follow, because like a lot of you, I'm a beginner. I'm a beginner in the world of tube flies in terms of tying and in fishing. I really am excited about this world, and I've done really well in it so far, but I'm really interested to see exactly how far I can take it. Thus, if you have any experience in anything that I'm going to be saying during this tutorial, as always, please feel free to comment in the section below on this YouTube page, because I really like you to share your experience with all of the other beginners out there as well. So with that said, let me change the camera angle and start with the system in which I carry these flies. Alright, we have some flies that are tied up. These are some of the ones that I tied during this series, and I'm ready to load up my fly box. Now the direction in which you take it is really up to you. I'll show you a few that I've seen used, and I'll show you exactly what I utilize. For starters, the beauty of tube flies is that there are no hooks attached to them. Thus, you don't have to worry about those hooks getting caught in one another, and you don't have to worry about tearing any materials when you're on the water or having any trouble dislodging them from one another. You can simply just throw them all into a box and go. In fact, a lot of fly fishermen will literally use a box similar to this and just dump them all in and go. To me, that's a little chaotic and it's a little disorganized. So if I was going to utilize a box, it would be one with dividers. And I could throw them in based on the material, based on the color, or based on how much weight they have. In my case, I decided to go with something a little bit simpler. I prefer Ziploc baggies in either the sandwich or the snack size. For starters, they're clear, you can see through them, and you can quickly identify what your patterns are. And then second of all, and most importantly, they're very lightweight. You can throw them in a shirt pocket, you can throw them in a jacket pocket. You don't have to worry about them bulking up a fly box or bulking up your vest or whatever you're going to be carrying them in. Now, I have these ones categorized based into the 4 major categories in which I would carry my flies. I'll kind of break those into subcategories and then explain it a little bit further from there. My largest baggie is always going to be my heads weighted. These are flies that I can fish as standalones. I don't have to worry about having a second section if I don't want them. This bag sometimes will get filled and really just have a lot of different styles and a lot of different patterns in it. So I've broken this down into additional baggies. Sometimes I'll have heads weighted light or heads weighted dark in terms of the shades, if it's a darker or a lighter color. Sometimes I even have heads weighted greens because I use so many green and chartreuse patterns. Or you can go with clousers and have a whole bag full of nothing more than the clouser style flies. So kind of think in that direction. So that's how I categorize the heads. And the opposite end, we have tails. I have heads with no weight. And then finally, just those in-between sections. So I'll start loading these baggies with some of the flies that I've tied during this tutorial and just kind of go over them with you. These are some what I would call section flies. These are basically a crystal chenille wrapped onto a tube. There's no weight to these whatsoever. So I can use these as a head if I wanted to, but more than likely I'll have a head fly of something and I can use this as a tail or a middle section. I would throw these 3 in the sections, and then I would also consider throwing in chartreuse tubes. And these are tubes with nothing more than chartreuse tied on them. I have white and I have this barred chartreuse. Now I also use these chartreuse tubes a lot as the tail. Thus, whenever I grab my baggies, I have a ton of these chartreuse tubes in that baggie for the tail section. So I'll be throwing them in there. So let me get the section bag out. and I'll grab my tail baggie. And in this one, I'll throw those 2 marabou tubes. Also, I have a tube that kind of looks like a clouser, but it's just deer tail. Nothing, no weight or anything else on it. This would be a tail section if I want to extend a clouser. Let's see, I have one with some ostrich herl. This would be a perfect tail section. You can see, and I'm calling this a tail section because the materials extend further out from the back of the tube. Thus, I can attach a piece of tubing to this and my hook, so that hook will be hidden by all these materials. And then finally, my last tail section, very similar to the previous one, except this is rubber legs. So these will all jump into my tail baggie. Then next we have heads with no weight. So into this baggie, I'm going to be throwing in patterns that basically look like a woolly bugger. Now this is a woolly bugger that has a tail on it. That's okay. I can just add them just like this, or I can add one that doesn't have a tail. To me, I would have both of these in that same baggie because, again, these are sometimes standalone flies. So this is one I could fish by itself. I could definitely fish this by itself, though more than likely I would partner this with a tail section. Here's another woolly bugger. Here's one of our gummy worms. Looks like we have another little bait fish fly, one of the piglusies. And then finally, just a little marabou guy. So to me, these would all be perfect for the heads. No weight. And this baggie is extremely lightweight. And then finally, into my favorite baggie, the heads weighted, I'm going to throw stuff like these cone heads with an antron material or a clouser style pattern. Now these two, these are kind of like a zonker style over a crystal chenille. These don't have a cone on them, they don't have lead eyes, but I actually wrap these with lead wire. So it's great that right away, even though I don't see lead wire and I didn't put any certain color wraps on the front, because I have a bag that's labeled heads weighted, I know right away that everything in that baggie is weighted. Thus, once they go in here, I'll be grabbing the right fly whenever that situation comes up. So again, this is my system. Very easy system, easy to carry, doesn't take up a lot of space. You can load these baggies up. Once you start to get a baggie that gets a little full, then divide it. Find a system in which you can divide it down additionally. For instance, for my section baggie, if it starts to get full, I'll have maybe just an entire one full of light colored sections and dark colored sections, or I'll base it on the material of sections. But more than likely, I'm not going to be carrying more than 6 baggies. 6 is the maximum. And if I can't fit those flies in those 6 baggies, more than likely I'm not going to be using them on the water. Alright, now we have our flies, we got them to the water, let's attach them to our line. So I'm going to take you through that process. I'm just going to grab a head section only. So this looks kind of like a clouser. I do not use orange line, this is just so you can see it on the video. But I'm going to slide this up the line. I have the eyes pointed forward. And the next thing I'm going to add is a little bit of the hook holder tubing. Let me show you a package of it. This is a package from HMH. This is their size 1/8 outside diameter. It's their small. I just have a piece of clear that's on right now. It's about a 1/2 inch, maybe slightly a little bit less than that, though I kind of made that larger just so you could see it on the video. So I would actually use just a slightly smaller piece than that. Then I'm going to slide it down, and the next thing I'm going to do is attach a hook. Now this is again one of the other beauties of tube fly fishing. We can adjust the size of the hook really simply just by tying it on whenever we get to the water based on that species we're trying to catch. I have some hooks that I use, and these are all from Allen Fly Fishing. It's their MP001. The 4 sizes I use most often are sizes 2, 4, 6, and 8. What's great about hooks like these is that they're very short shanked, they have a great bend, and they have a very sharp point. By having a really short shank, the fish can't really utilize that long shank to turn the hook and spit that fly out of its mouth. So you really have a great advantage of using short shanked hooks whenever you're fly fishing with tube flies. This MP001 hook that I'm using from Allen Fly Fishing, this is one that I use on intruder style flies and all of my tube flies. I'll give you a look at the packaging. And the first method that I use to tie these hooks on is simply just my improved cinch, what I use whenever I'm tying any other fly on. So I'm just going to put that through the eye. From this point I'm going to turn it approximately 5 or 6 times. somewhere in there. Bring my tag end back through the loop, and by doing that I've also created a second loop. I'm going to place it through that loop, hold on to the tag, pull everything tight, lock it in place, and then I want to trim the excess. At this point, all I have to do is connect these three pieces. It really doesn't matter which one you do first. I'll next get the tubing, and I'll attach it to the fly. So I'm just going to move all these materials out of the way and push the tubing up maybe an eighth of an inch onto that tube, and then next slide it down towards my hook. And this is another great part of this. I know that my eyes are going to be riding this way, so I can ensure that my hook is pointed with that hook point up so that it doesn't snag anything in case this is really riding on the bottom. I'm just going to pull that in part way, and now I have my finished tube fly ready to rock and roll. So basically, you can use whatever existing knot that you typically use for your hook, tie that in once you have the fly and the hook holder tubing already up the line. Now again, I'm just going to go back to the beauty of this system. Right now I've tied on, I believe, a size 6. Say I'm going after a larger species and I want to use this style of bait fish, this style of claws or minnow, but I really want to have a little bit more of a hook. I can immediately just pull this away, cut it, and add a size 2 quickly. Or if you look at it from the opposite end of the spectrum, I can grab a size 10 if I want and add that in so I have a much smaller hook, and maybe I think that for some reason that smaller hook's going to benefit me. So it's a really easy system to adjust accordingly. I'm going to show you a second method for attaching your tube flies to your line. This is without a doubt my favorite method, but the reason I showed you the improved cinch for starters was really to stress that whatever knot you're using right now to attach your leader to your hook, you can continue to use. However, in my opinion, this is easily the best method. So I'm going to start off the same way I did with the last method. I have my tube fly. I'm going to slide it up my line so it's heading towards the fly line. I've already attached my hook holder tubing to my fly, so they're both on there and they're out of the way. I'm going to come down to the tag end, and instead of attaching it directly to my hook to start, I'm going to incorporate a loop on the end of my line. I'm going to be tying a double surgeon's loop into this line. To do so, it's really simple. There's lots of videos and pictures of this out there. But you're basically just going to take the tag end, fold it over itself. So now I have a loop in the end of my line. I'm going to take that loop and tie it in an overhand knot. Once. And then I'm going to put it around a second time. That's what it's going to look like. If I was on the water right now, I would dip this in the water, get a little moist, and then pull it to tighten. That's the entire loop. I'm going to cut off the tag end. And now I'm ready to incorporate the loop onto my hook. Now in this case, I'm using a larger hook from Allen Fly Fishing. This is still the same style. It's their MP001, but this is a size 2. The reason I'm using a size 2 right now is so I can get this line through the eye of the hook. I'm using a backing right now. This is 20 or 30 pound backing, and it's basically so that you guys can see it on the camera. But what I want to stress is if you're out fishing, you're using 6, 8, 10, 12 pound test, you don't have to worry about it going through the eye of the hook with sizes 6, size 4, size 2. I've never had a problem yet. So what I'm going to do for this is just take that loop and push it through the eye. Once it comes through, I'm then going to take the loop and bring it around the bend. Once it's around the bend, I can pull, and now I've completely locked the hook onto my line. This is an absolutely great system because if you want to change your fly, if you want to change your hook, if something happens to your hook, you can easily do this and you don't have to worry about cutting a knot and retying. Instead, I'm simply going to push down on it to loosen that loop, and then I'll pull the loop back around the bend, take off the hook, and put on a new fly, put on a new hook. It doesn't matter, but it can be done in a very short amount of time, so you can spend more of that precious time fishing, not screwing around with your knots. To attach your fly, it's going to be with the same method. I'm just going to keep this tight, and then I'm going to slide my fly down the line. Now in this case, you're going to notice that my fly has stopped before that hook holder tubing could go over the eye of the hook. The only reason it stopped is, again, because I'm using 20-pound or 30-pound backing. If I'm using 6, 8, 10, 12-pound monofilament, that tube is not going to stop. It's going to slide over that knot that I put in for the double surgeon's loop, and then I can attach this hook holder tubing to the eye of my hook. So this is without a doubt my favorite method. It's really a quick change method, but it offers a really secure connection between your line and your hook, and it allows for so many different possibilities when you're on the water and you want to make some changes quickly. This is the method I recommend, and this is the method that I use whenever I'm fishing these tube flies. Alright, in this last section of video, I want to show you the mix and match system, the head-tail system that I like to incorporate, that I've learned about through some of the readings that I've done recently. Let me show you the clouser style. I already have that clouser on right now. It's heading up towards the fly line. Attached to the tail, I've already added a piece of hook holder tubing. This is the small. Next, I'm going to grab a tail section. It's basically a clouser tail without any weight. I've already added the hook holder tubing on the back of it, and I'm going to attempt to slide this onto my backing. This is pretty tough because this backing does not want to go through these easily. Alright, that one was painless. Once it's on, I'm just going to slide it up, attach the two with the hook holder tubing that's coming off my head. Now they're attached. I can tie my hook on, slide them down, and then incorporate this last piece of hook holder tubing to the hook eye. So I have a really nice extended body there. If I'm looking for a bait fish that's that long, I have it. If I need it a little smaller, all I have to do is basically take away the lower section, and I can fish the head by itself. Now say we need more sections. Say we need additional sections. Let me show you how that works. Now I'm going to grab a few different pieces. This is one of my head sections. This is basically a zonker over some crystal flash chenille. I've already added my hook holder tubing. This is large hook holder tubing. Please don't be like me and add the small tubing in between the flies. Then once you have everything rigged, you realize you can't attach them one at a time. It is very frustrating, trust me. So I have that as my head piece. I'm going to add a section in the middle. This is simply just some crystal flash chenille over a tube. There's no weight to it whatsoever. I already have my hook holder tubing. That's going to go towards the rear, towards the hook. I'm going to add this piece, slide it up. I'm going to attach them right now. So I have these two pieces. They are now attached. I can put a hook on here and wrap it up like this. However, I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to add a tail section. Let me trim that just so I know I can get this last piece on. This is an ostrich tail. Again, you'll see I already have the hook holder tubing coming off the rear of it. I have that on. I may slide it the whole way up. Attach it. And there is my tube fly. This is a huge, crazy looking fly, but trust me, it catches fish. I would eventually lash my hook onto the very end, either with my improved cinch or more than likely my loop, pull everything snug, and I have a rig ready to go. If it's too long, I can simply take out this middle section. If it's too short, I can add additional sections. That's the beauty of this entire system. Well, with all of that said, I am going to wrap up this part 6 from Vise to the Water. Thanks again, Ron, for the great suggestion for the segment name. Thanks go out to all of you for viewing this YouTube fly tying tutorial and all the previous ones in my tube fly series, so thank you. Also, thanks go out to Allen Fly Fishing for the use of their MP001 hook. You can find that hook and many others at allenflyfishing.com. As always, if you have any thoughts, any comments, any questions, please feel free to leave them directly on this page, or you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. You can also like Trout and Feather on Facebook. You can find additional YouTube fly tying tutorials on my website, which is troutandfeather.com. Again, a great big thanks goes out to all of you. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I hope you look forward to many additional ones to come.